think the title of this article says it all, but we'll dig a little deeper. Court rules Palestinian filmmaker must pay damages to Israeli soldier who took part in massacre. This is from Miko Palet. I'll link it down below on the Mint Press news site. In a particularly draconian decision, Israeli court has ruled that documentary film Jenin, or maybe Jenin, will be banned from screening in Israel. Additionally, all copies of the film must be collected and destroyed. The court went even further and ordered producer, director, and actor Mohammed Bakrai, the man behind the film which documents the Israeli assault on the Jenin refugee camp, must pay damages to an Israeli officer who participated in the massacre and appears in the film for about 5 seconds. Israel's military invasion of the Palestinian refugee camp and the slaughter which followed took place in March 2002. The army entered the camp with tanks, special forces, commando units, and several reservist brigades. The camp was bombarded from the air and from the ground. Several hundred Palestinian fighters fought heroically, armed with nothing but semi-automatic rifles and rudimentary guerrilla warfare skills. 25 Israeli soldiers lost their lives in the camp, and countless Palestinians, mostly civilians, were killed, silencing the survivors' point of view. Again, this really reminds me of how the U.S. empire, the U.S. government, has gone after Julian Assange for exposing the crimes of the U.S. empire instead of the actual people who committed the war crimes. And in this case, the Israeli government and these, soldiers who took place in this massacre and this war crime are the ones crying foul and trying to punish and, persecute this documentary filmmaker who all he did was document what was happening in this Palestinian refugee camp, and it's deplorable. Jenin includes testimony from people of all ages who lived through the Israeli assault on the camp. There is no question that hearing the descriptions and experiences of the survivors of that awful trauma is heart-wrenching, but Bakari himself never makes any direct accusations in the film. Again, Bakari's the producer, director, and actor. He shows footage of Israeli soldiers, tanks, and armored personnel carriers and of Palestinians being arrested, but at no point in the movie is an actual accusation made, and it is clear that the only perspective offered in the film are from those who live in the camp. Protests erupted in Israel as soon as the movie was shown. Bakari was called a Nazi and slandered by the press and public for daring to show what Palestinians had experienced at the hands of the Israeli soldiers who entered the camp. Soldiers who had participated in what is known as the Battle of Jenin demanded that Israeli authorities censor the movie and not allow theaters to show it, and they eventually got their way. So this is some people cleaning up, some rescue workers trying to sift through human remains, and that young boy is treated at the Jenin hospital moments after he and his friend were wounded in an explosion in the Jenin refugee camp. His friend died the next morning. The Jenin refugee camp was strewn with leftover Palestinian explosives and unexploded Israeli ordnances after the attack, causing additional injuries and deaths. The film was banned by the Israeli Film Rating Board on the premise that it was libelous and might offend the public. I mean, yes, it should offend the public, seeing what the Israeli government and the security forces perpetrated against these Palestinians in this refugee camp. Yes. Bakari appealed the decision, and the case went all the way to the Israeli Supreme Court, which ultimately overturned the board's decision. Since then, those who participated in the assault have been looking for ways to challenge the film. In November 2016, Nassim Megnaji, a reserve officer who took part in the Operation Defensive Shield, also known as the Massacre of the Jenin refugee camp, sued Bakari for 2.6 million shekels, equivalent to $745,000 US. In his suit, Menagi claimed that he appears and is named in the film and that it libeled Israeli soldiers by presenting them as war criminals. Bakari argued that the purpose of the lawsuit was persecution and political silence. Yes, I think he's completely correct on that. And the movie makes no accusation against Menagi specifically, only shows Bakari continuously yet fruitlessly claim the point of view of the Palestinians who experienced the onslaught on the camp. Still, the district court in Israeli-occupied city of Lid ruled in Menagi's favor and ordered Bakari to pay Menagi the equivalent of $55,000 US. Now the case is expected to go back to the Supreme Court. Israeli history of war crimes. Israeli forces did not allow the Red Cross or any other international observers to enter the camp for many days after the assault was over. This allowed them to clean up the camp before anyone from the outside was able to witness what had been done. Israeli authorities, courts, media, and public opinion tend to view Palestinian claims regarding human rights abuses, violence, and massacres committed by the military units as lies. Internal investigations by the military and other Israeli government agencies rarely find Israeli forces guilty of war crimes. Very similar to the U.S. empire and all the war crimes U.S. soldiers have committed abroad, and yet nothing. Trump pardoned, one of his pardons was for those, war criminals in Iraq that killed numerous Iraqi civilians. The reason that Jenin created such a strong reaction in Israel is that people involved, and even those who were not directly involved, know that Israel has a history of atrocities and war crimes. Israel claims that the IDF is the most moral army in the world. Yet almost every single Israeli has either been witness to or knows someone who has witnessed or even committed atrocities. It looks like you're able to watch this documentary on Vimeo. I mean, it's just this. Oh, and then this particularly, the driver of a D9. On May 31st, 2002, Israeli journalist Tasodek Yakazeli, apologize if I didn't pronounce that right. There's a good chance that happened. Working on the Israeli daily Yedit Aronot, published an article in Hebrew about the driver of a D9 bulldozer. That's a massive bulldozer, who went by the moniker Bear the Kurd. Bear made a name for himself during the assault on the Jenin refugee camp when for 72 hours straight he drove his bulldozer into countless houses and destroyed everything in his path, ramming into homes regardless of whether or not they were inhabited. He was quoted as saying, "I made them a football stadium and I have no regrets. I'm proud of my work. I never gave the people a chance to run in the house before I ran over them and ruined the houses with my bulldozer." Jesus Christ. None of this is shown or mentioned in Bakri's film, yet it provides a picture of the atmosphere among Israeli soldiers that entered the camp. Army unit in which the D9 driver operated went on to receive a medal for its actions during the assault, and the man known as Bear the Kurd became a hero to the troops because so many were buried under the rubble. To this day, no one knows how many Palestinians were killed in 2002 at the Jenin refugee camp. It's hard to anticipate what the Israeli Supreme Court will rule when it hears the Bakri case. However, in a state that was built on war crimes and atrocities, one may expect that all branches of government work together to keep the truth from coming out. Either way, few Israeli war crimes are as documented as this one, and so Jenin must be viewed and shared widely. Definitely, that's going to be on my list to check out. I might even try to watch it tomorrow. But again, quite Orwellian. Instead of looking at the actions of the IDF and other, Israeli, military people who committed this atrocity, this massacre of Palestinians at this refugee camp in Jenin in 2002, the people who took part in it are trying to go after this documentary filmmaker for exposing their atrocities. It's quite disgusting. Like the video if you like the damn video. Subscribe for more content. Peace. Much love. All power to the people.